In this demo, what I'll be doing is getting some content uploaded into an S3 bucket using PowerShell. We can do this using the AWS Management Console. Programmers can make API calls to make that happen. You could use the CLI. There are many other ways to do it as well, maybe even using AWS Transfer and over SFTP, uploading contents to a bucket. Even that's possible. But we're going to focus on PowerShell. If you go into the docs.aws.amazon.com website and search up things like PowerShell and S3, you'll have plenty of resources to get started with how to do it, such as upload objects to an Amazon S3 bucket. And there are examples of how to make that happen. Now remember, you're going to need to make sure you have AWS tools for PowerShell. Whether you have an EC2 instance that's Windows-based that you've deployed, that has AWS tools for PowerShell pre-installed, or whether you download and install it on your on-premises machine. In this particular case, I'm going to use a Windows EC2 instance that I've deployed. I'm going to go into the Start menu, I'm going to type in PowerShell, and I'll right-click on it because I want to make sure I run an administrator-type session for PowerShell. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is try to figure out what the name of the commandlet or commandlets are for S3 management. So get-command **. How about bucket? Let's put in bucket and see what we get. Close that with an asterisk. Oh yeah, this looks like what we want to work with. It's all from the AWS PowerShell module as shown in the rightmost column. Okay, so things like get-s3 bucket to get a list of them. New-s3 bucket to create a new one. Remove s3 bucket to remove one. However, what I want to do here is I want to run get-command **s3 to see what else we get. Now we're getting somewhere as well because I have a write-s3 object commandlet, which we can actually use to upload content into a bucket through PowerShell. All right, so let's clear the screen. I'm going to go ahead and start with get-s3 bucket to make sure that we are even authenticated. Okay, it looks like we're authenticated. We have a list of buckets, one of which is called budgets-east. That's the one I want to work with. So I'm going to run write-s3 object dash bucket name parameter. I'm going to specify budgets-east. Then I'm going to use the dash file parameter, and this is where I need to refer to a local file on my on-premises computer, the path and the file name. I could also use wildcards for the items that I want to upload into S3. Here in the Windows File Explorer, I've got two text files, budget 4 and budget 5. For dash file, I'll specify budget4.txt, the file I want to upload, and I'll use the dash canned ACL name to set permissions for that. I'll just use a predefined one called private. So private access only, not public anonymous access. Okay, so at this point, the file has been uploaded to that location. So now I'm going to run get-s3 object dash bucket name, of course. In this case, it's budgets-east, and I'll just press enter. So by default, what I'm getting is a listing of the items that are there. Notice that the attribute that actually contains the name of the file is called key, K-E-Y. So there's budget4.txt. So we could take this a step further. I'll use the up arrow key to bring up that command, and I'm just going to pipe this to select, and I'm going to specify key as the attribute. Now what I'm getting is a list of folders and a list of files. So we've got a 2022 folder in our bucket with a couple of budget files. We also have budget4.txt in the root of the S3 bucket because it doesn't have a folder prefix in front of it. Now back here in the AWS console, if I go to S3, and if we navigate down to our budgets-east bucket, so as per what we were seeing in PowerShell, here's the 2022 folder. I can open it up. There's a couple of budget files. But if I go back to the root of that S3 bucket, here's the budget4 file that we just uploaded using PowerShell. All of the properties are set accordingly as they normally would be with any method that we use to upload content. I could click open. If it's an OMIME type, in this case it's just a TXT file, it opens up directly in the browser. Now back here in PowerShell, I could also run get-s3 object dash bucket name. We know it's called budgets-east, but this time what I'm going to do is specify dash key, let's say of 2022 / because that is a folder. Now that's fine, but it doesn't quite return what I expect. You might say, well, what about showing the contents within it? Let's use the up arrow key to go back to that command. And what I'm going to do is change it so that instead of specifying the key, which means we want to reference that folder itself, I'm not going to use dash key. I'm just going to put in the name of the folder, 2022/enter. Now it's returning only the contents of that folder. And again, let's say all we care about is the key attribute or key property. So up arrow key again, and I'm going to pipe this to select and tell it I just want the key. Now we're getting only the contents of the 2022 folder. And finally, if we want to follow along the same type of syntax logic to remove an S3 object or a file, we can use remove-S3 object. As you might guess, you have to tell it the bucket, so dash bucket name, budgets-east, and as you probably would guess, dash key. You have to tell it what you want to remove. In this case, let's say we just want to remove budget4.txt. That's not in a folder, it's just in the root. We didn't force it on the command line, so it's asking us, are you sure? I'll type in the letter Y for yes, and that's it. Now back here in the console, if I go back to my budgets east bucket and click refresh, it looks like it was refreshed already. We have the 2022 folder, but we don't have budget4.txt any longer because we removed it using PowerShell.